351. The Fawn and the Deer. A fawn once said to the deer, "Father, you are larger and faster than dogs by nature, and you also have extraordinary horns for defense. Why then do you fear them so much?" The deer laughed and replied, "What you say is true, my child, but I know one thing. When I hear a dog's bark, I'm immediately carried away to flight. I don't know how." This fable shows that no advice can strengthen those who are naturally cowardly. Note, in another version, the deer is depicted as the mother. 352. The Country Mouse and the City Mouse. A country mouse was friends with a city mouse. The city mouse, invited by his friend, came to dine in the fields. Eating barley and wheat, he said, "Friend, you live an ant's life. I have plenty of good things. Come with me and you'll enjoy everything." They immediately left together. The city mouse showed beans, wheat, dates, cheese, honey, and fruits. The country mouse, amazed, praised him greatly and regretted his own fortune. As they were about to start eating, a man suddenly opened the door. Frightened by the noise, the poor mice jumped into cracks. When they wanted to take figs again, another person came to get something inside. Seeing him, they again leaped into hiding in a hole. The country mouse, disheartened by hunger, sighed and said to the other, "Farewell, friend. Eat your fill and enjoy these things with pleasure, along with danger and great fear. I, poor wretch, will live without fear, eating barley and wheat, suspecting no one." This fable shows that living simply and peacefully is better than indulging in luxury with fear and pain. 353. The Bull and the Mouse. A mouse bit a bull. The bull in pain chased the mouse, but the mouse quickly escaped into the depths of its hole. The bull stood there digging at the walls with his horns until, exhausted, he sank down and fell asleep by the hole. The mouse peeped out from inside, crept up, bit the bull again, and fled back into its hole. The bull leapt up but was at a loss for what to do. The mouse squeaked at him. The big one isn't always powerful. Sometimes being small and humble is stronger. 354. The Blacksmiths and the Mouse. A mouse was carrying the lifeless body of another mouse, a victim of starvation. When the blacksmiths saw this, they stood and laughed. The surviving mouse tearfully said to them, "How shameful that you can't even feed a single mouse. Do not mock the misfortune of your neighbor." 55. The Traveller and Truth. A traveller in the wilderness found a woman standing alone, looking downcast. He asked her, "Who are you?" She replied, "I am Truth." He asked again, "Why do you dwell here in the wilderness?" She answered, "In times past, lies were found among few people. But now, lies have spread to all of humanity. Life becomes wretched and evil for people when lies are preferred over truth." Tab 356. The Sheep, the Shepherd, and the Dog. One day a sheep spoke to the shepherd, saying, "You shear us, taking our wool for yourself. You milk us, turning it into cheese, which you enjoy. Our young ones increase your flocks, making them thrive. But we gain nothing from all of this. All the food we eat comes from the earth. What kind of abundant growth is there in the mountains? Only sparse grass, even when covered with dew. And yet, you take care of this dog among us, feeding her with the same rich food that you enjoy yourself." When the dog heard this, she responded, "If I weren't here, guarding you, you wouldn't even have enough grass to eat. By constantly running around you, I keep the marauding thief and the dangerous wolf away from the flock." 357. The Donkey Envying the Horse. Once a donkey envied a horse who was well fed and well cared for. The donkey, on the other hand, barely had enough chaff to eat, even though he worked hard. When war broke out, a soldier mounted the horse, fully armed, and rode him everywhere, even into the heart of the battle. The horse was wounded and fell. Seeing this, the donkey changed his mind and felt sorry for the horse. This fable teaches that one should not envy rulers and the wealthy. Instead, one should consider the dangers they face and learn to love poverty. 358. The Donkey Pretending to be a Lion. A donkey wished to appear as a lion. Unable to change his nature, he fulfilled his desire through appearance. Wearing a lion's skin, he ravaged the farmer's crops like a lion. But when a strong wind blew, it stripped away his disguise. The farmers, whose labor he had consumed, saw that he was just a donkey and beat him to death with clubs. Borrowed finery becomes a danger to those who use it. The Donkey on the Roof. A donkey climbed onto the roof of a house. As he frolicked about, he broke some roof tiles. A man rushed up, dragged the donkey down to the ground, and beat him with a club. The donkey, his back aching from the blows, said to the man, "But just yesterday and the day before, you were so amused when the monkey did the very same thing." 60. The donkey and the thorns. A donkey was eating the sharp leaves of a thorn bush. A fox saw him and approached, saying mockingly, "How can you chew and swallow such tough food with your soft, loose tongue?" 361. The bird-catcher, the partridge, and the rooster. A bird-catcher was about to dine on herbs and celery when a friend suddenly arrived. His birdcage was empty, as he hadn't caught anything. He decided to kill a speckled partridge that he had tamed for hunting purposes. The partridge begged, "My friend, how will you hunt with your net in the future? Who will gather the flock of friendly keen-eyed birds for you? Whose melody will lull you to sleep?" The bird-catcher spared the partridge and decided to catch a young rooster instead. The rooster cried from his perch, "How will you know how long until dawn without me, your timekeeper? How will you know when golden-bowed Orion watches at night? Who will remind you of morning tasks when birds' wings are still dewy?" The bird-catcher replied, "You certainly know useful hours, but my friend must have something to eat." 362. The snake's head and tail. Once upon a time, the tail of a snake decided it no longer wanted to follow the head. It said, "Now it's my turn to lead." The head, which had always been the leader, responded, "You have no eyes, no nose. How can you lead us? You can't guide the body properly without those." But the tail ignored the head's warning and insisted on leading. In its ignorance, it took the snake down a dangerous path. The tail led the body blindly, causing it to end up in a deep hole. The snake's spine scraped painfully against the rocks. The tail, realizing its mistake, began to regret its actions. The tail called out to the head, "Please save us. I made a terrible mistake. If you return me to my original place, I will follow you properly from now on and never cause any trouble again." The story teaches that when one acts out of self-interest and ignores their proper role, the consequences can be disastrous. 363. The Sun and the Painted Lion. A timid old man had a brave only son who loved hunting. One night the father dreamed that his son was killed by a lion. Afraid that the dream might come true, he built a magnificent house with high ceilings, strong walls, and bright sunlight. There he locked his son away under constant guard. To comfort him, the father decorated the walls with paintings of animals, including a lion. But seeing the lion only made the boy sadder. He approached the painting and said, "You wicked beast! Because of the false vision you put in my father's mind, I am trapped here like a prisoner under guard. Why should I only curse you with words and not strike you with my hands?" Furious, he struck the painting, trying to claw out the lion's eyes. But a splinter of wood broke off and lodged beneath his fingernail. The wound became infected, and despite his father's desperate efforts, the infection spread to his groin. In the end, the boy died, not by the fangs of a living lion, but by the image of one. No matter how much you try to escape fate, what is meant to be will always find you. Chapter 364. The Beauty Contest of the Animals. Zeus decided to award prizes for the most beautiful offspring to all animals. He carefully inspected each one to make his judgment. A monkey also came, claiming to be the mother of a beautiful baby. She cradled in her arms a naked, snub-nosed little monkey. When the gods saw the monkey, they all burst into laughter. But the mother insisted, "Zeus will decide the winner. In my eyes, this one is the most beautiful of all." This story illustrates that everyone sees their own offspring as the most beautiful. 365. The Shepherd, the Wolf, and the Dog. A shepherd was herding his sheep into the fold. He was about to lock a wolf inside with the flock. The dog, seeing this, said to the shepherd, "How can you hope to protect the sheep when you're bringing this wolf into the flock?" Those who associate with evil bring great harm and death upon themselves. Now the 366. The Shepherd and the Wolf Cub. A shepherd found a young wolf cub and raised it. As the cub grew, he taught it to steal from nearby flocks. One day, after learning this skill, the wolf turned to the shepherd and said, "Now that you've trained me to steal, be careful. Your own sheep may soon go missing." For those who are naturally inclined to seize and take more than their share, once they have learned, they often harm their own teachers. Lot 367. War and hubris. All the gods were getting married, each taking a wife by lot. War came for the last draw. He found only hubris remaining and fell deeply in love with her. He married her, and now follows her wherever she goes. When hubris enters a city or nation, smiling at the crowds, war and battles soon follow behind her. 368. The clay pot and the rain. A great winter storm, driven by the winds and heavy clouds, broke out, pouring down a heavy rain. As the rain flooded the land, it drenched the clay pot that had been left exposed in the fields. The warm air had previously softened the clay, preparing it to be properly baked in the fire. At that moment, the cloud asked the pot what its name was. The pot, unaware of its dire situation, replied, "My name is Amphora. I was shaped by the potter's skilled hand, and my gently curved sides were made by his swiftly spinning wheel." The cloud, looking at the pot, responded, "You have managed to keep that shape up until now, but the rain is coming to wash it away." And as the floodwaters hit with greater force, the pot cracked and broke into pieces, carried away by the stream. How unfortunate it was for the pot, which, taking such a noble name, had dared to speak to the storm clouds that could unleash such a powerful torrent of rain. This story serves as a reminder that those who rise to high positions, thinking they are invincible, can often be brought low by the forces of fate. The River and the Hide, variant version. A river saw a cowhide being carried along by its current and asked, "What is your name?" The hide responded, "I am called Tough." The river, laughing as it moved, said, "You might want to find another name. I will soon make you soft." This teaches us that misfortune often brings down a bold and arrogant person. Note: amphora refers to a type of ancient ceramic jar with two handles, commonly used in ancient Greece and Rome. These jars were primarily used for storing and transporting goods such as oil, wine, and grain. The name amphora comes from the Greek words amphi, meaning on both sides, and phoros, meaning carrying, reflecting the jar's design with handles on both sides for easy transport. Amphorae played an important role in ancient commerce and trade, serving as a practical tool for everyday use. 369. The Rose and the Amaranth. An amaranth grew next to a rose bush. The amaranth said, "What a lovely flower you are. Both gods and humans desire you. I admire your beauty and sweet scent." The rose replied, "O amaranth, you everlasting flower, I live only for a short time. Even if no one picks me, I wither away. But you bloom and stay young forever." This story shows that it's better to live simply for a long time than to enjoy luxury briefly before facing misfortune or death. 370. The Soldier and the Trumpet. Once there was a soldier, a weary veteran who had fought in many battles. He had made a vow to burn all his weapons, including those that dying soldiers had surrendered to him in victory, as well as anything he had seized from the fleeing enemy. Fortune smiled upon him, and now it was time to fulfill his vow. He began tossing the weapons one by one into the fire. However, the trumpet protested, loudly denying its guilt and claiming that it did not deserve to be sent to the flames. "You cannot say that my sound caused harm," it said. "You claim that I directed missiles at your arms, but all I did was urge the weapons forward with my call and blast. In fact, I swear by the stars that I tried to blow as softly as possible." Despite this, the soldier added the trumpet to the fire. As it crackled and burned, he remarked, "Now you face greater pain and punishment. Even though you couldn't cause harm on your own, you are even more guilty for encouraging others to do evil." 371. The Lizard and the Snake. They say that there was once a lizard who split in two when he tried to match the length of a snake. You will hurt yourself and achieve nothing if you try to imitate someone far better than you. 372. The Three Oxen and the Lion. 3 oxen always grazed together. A lion wanted to eat them but couldn't because of their unity. Using deceitful words, he separated them. Then, finding each one alone, he devoured them. This fable teaches that if you want to live safely, distrust enemies, but trust and protect your friends. 3373. The Ant and the Cicada. Once during winter, the ants were sunning their rain-soaked grain. The cicada, seeing them, was starving and on the brink of death. He ran to them and begged for food. The ants asked, Why didn't you work in the summer and instead spent your time lazily, now coming to beg?" The cicada replied, "I was enjoying myself, playing music and entertaining all the travellers." Upon hearing this, the ants smiled and called out, "Dance in the winter, since you played in the summer. But in the summer, you should have stored grain instead of delighting travellers with your lyre." This version shows that one should not neglect or hesitate to do what is necessary, as hesitating can lead to danger. Note, the story we commonly know as The Ant and the Cricket originally featured a cicada. While the cicada was common in the Greek and Roman regions, it was a rare insect in other areas where the story spread, which is why it was changed to a cricket. 374. The Goat and the Vine. A goat was eating the fresh shoots of a vine. The vine spoke to him, "Why do you harm me unjustly? Isn't there grass for you to eat, goat?" The vine continued, "You foolish creature, when you are sacrificed, I will provide the wine for your death." This fable shows that one's actions often come back to affect them in turn. 75. The Bald Horseman. A bald man placed a wig upon his head and rode his horse proudly into the training grounds, his armour gleaming in the sunlight. With practised ease he guided his horse, displaying his skill. Then suddenly a strong wind blew. It tore the wig from his head, exposing his smooth, bald scalp beneath. The crowd erupted in laughter, amused by the sharp contrast between his natural head and the false hair. Without hesitation, the man joined in their laughter and said, "Why should I be surprised that a wig never truly mine has left me, when even my own hair, which was mine from birth, abandoned me first?" Let no one grieve over misfortune that has befallen them. What one was not given by nature at birth will not remain with them forever. For we came into this world naked, and naked shall we depart. 376. The Ox and the Frog. While drinking, an ox stepped on a frog's offspring. The frog mother, who had been absent, returned and asked her children where their brother was. "He's dead, mother. Just now, before his time, a huge four-legged creature came, and he lies beneath it, crushed by its hoof." The frog mother, puffing herself up, asked if the animal was this big. Her children replied, "No." She inflated herself even more. Once again they told her, "The ox is bigger than you." Finally, in her frustration, she tried to puff herself up even more, but in doing so she burst and died. The poor who try to imitate the mighty end up punishing themselves. 377. The Crow and the Boastful Swallow. The swallow boasted to the crow, "I am a fair young maiden, an Athenian princess and the daughter of the king of Athens." She then proceeded to tell the story of Tereus, how he had raped her and cut out her tongue. The crow replied, "If you can speak so much with your tongue cut out, imagine how much you would say if it were still intact." For the boastful, their own words serve as proof of their lies. Note: Tereus, refer to note 277. 3. The Two Pots. As the river banks gave way, the current swept the two pots away together. One was made of bronze, poured into a mould, the other was shaped from clay. Their differing materials and crafts created an uneasy harmony as the river carried them along its uncertain path. The bronze pot, heavy and solid, swore to keep her distance from the clay pot, fearing that a collision might shatter the fragile vessel. The clay pot, however, worried that the heavier pot might harm her. Despite the reassuring words of the bronze pot, the clay pot could not rid herself of fear. "Though your words make me feel safe," the clay pot said, "the fear will not leave my heart. Whether the wave pushes me into you or you into me, I will always be the one to suffer." 379. The Man and His Daughter. A man fell in love with his own daughter. Tormented by this unnatural desire, he sent his wife away to the countryside. Then he forced himself upon his daughter. She said to him, "Father, what you are doing is unholy. I would rather have given myself to 100 men than to you." 380. The King's Son and His Guts. When he had finished bathing, Xanthus called Aesop to bring what he needed and went to dinner. After they had been drinking for a while, Xanthus's belly reminded him that it was time to relieve himself. Aesop stood by with a towel and a pitcher of water. Xanthus said to him, "Can you tell me why it is that when we defecate, we often look at our own droppings?" Aesop replied, "Because long ago the son of a king, due to his indulgence in luxury foods and his loose lifestyle, spent so much time in the bathroom, so long that he forgot what he was doing and passed his own wits. Since then, whenever men relieve themselves, they look down to check that they have not done the same. But don't worry, as there is no danger of you passing your wits, since you don't have any. Note, past his own guts refers to the metaphorical use of guts for wits or reason. In ancient Greek thought, the guts, Greek nous or nous, represented one's intellect or mental faculties, rather than physical intestines. The Old Man and His Donkeys. There was an old farmer who had lived his whole life in the countryside and had never seen the city. He asked his children to let him visit the city at least once before he died. So his children hitched the donkeys to the wagon and said, "Just drive them, and they'll take you to the city." As they were halfway there, a storm suddenly came up, and the sky grew dark. The donkeys lost their way and wandered to the edge of a cliff. When the old man saw the danger he was in, he said, "O Zeus, what crime have I committed that I must die this way? My killers are not even horses, but these miserable donkeys." Has 382. The Delphians and their ancestors. The people of Delphi asked Aesop, "Who were our ancestors?" Aesop replied, "They were slaves. And if you don't know this, it's time you learned it. Long ago, whenever the Greeks captured a city, it was customary to send 1/10 of the spoils to Apollo. So out of every 100 oxen, they would send 10, the same with goats and other things, money, women, men. You, being descendants of those men and women, are like slaves in bondage. This is your origin. You are slaves to all the Greeks." When the Delphians heard this, they were surprised and asked, "And who are our ancestors?" Aesop answered, "Slaves. And if you don't understand this, let me explain. Long ago, when the Greeks captured a city, they sent 1/10 of the spoils to Apollo. Out of every 100 oxen, they sent 10, the same with goats and other goods, money, men, women. You are the descendants of these slaves, and so, by birth, you are bound to the Greeks as their slaves." With that, Aesop prepared to leave. Hash 383. Prometheus and the Two Roads. Zeus once commanded Prometheus to show mankind two paths, one the path of freedom, and the other the path of slavery. The path of freedom, Prometheus said, started out rough. It was narrow, steep and dry, filled with thorns and dangers at every turn. However, as one continued along the way, it led to a wide, smooth plain. This plain was surrounded by groves of fruit trees and flowing water, where the hardships of the journey ended in peace. The path of slavery, on the other hand, began as a wide, pleasant plain. It was covered in flowers and beautiful sights, a path that seemed full of joy and luxury, but in the end it became narrow, difficult and impossible to climb, like a sheer cliff. 384. The Mouse and the Frog. A mouse once became friends with a frog. The frog invited the mouse to dine with him. "Eat whatever you wish, my friend, and do not be shy with me, your dear companion," said the frog. The frog then tied the mouse's foot to his own with a piece of string and swam with him out into the middle of the lake. But once they reached the middle, the frog turned treacherous. He sank into the water, dragging the mouse with him. The poor mouse drowned, his body floating up to the surface of the lake, still tied to the frog. At that moment, an eagle flying overhead saw the mouse and grabbed him with his talons. As the eagle flew away, he also carried the frog, still bound to the mouse, and ate him as well. It is said that even in death, the wronged are avenged by divine justice, which watches over all and balances the scales of fate. 385. True Dreams and False Dreams. Xanthus' wife said to Aesop, "Your words show you're clever with your tongue, but a dream misled me. I thought I'd get a handsome slave, yet you're deformed." Aesop replied, "Don't be surprised, mistress, that the dream tricked you. Not all dreams are true. Apollo, the Muses' leader, asked Zeus for the gift of prophecy. Zeus granted it, making Apollo excel in oracular skills. But Apollo became too boastful, looking down on everyone. This angered Zeus, his superior. Zeus, not wanting Apollo to have such power over men, created true dreams to reveal the future to people in their sleep. When Apollo realized no one would need his prophecies anymore, he begged Zeus for forgiveness and asked him not to discredit his oracle. Zeus forgave Apollo and created false dreams to give people misleading visions in their sleep. This way, when people found their dreams unreliable, they'd return to the original prophet. That's why some dreams seem true, but turn out false. So don't be surprised if what you see in your sleep doesn't match reality. You didn't have a true dream, but one of the false ones meant to deceive you with fake visions. 386. A Mother's Prayer. A woman had a daughter who was simple-minded. She prayed to all the gods, asking them to give her daughter some sense. The daughter often overheard her mother's prayers. One day, they went to the countryside. The girl wandered away from her mother and left the farmyard. There, she saw a man coupling with a mule. She asked him, "What are you doing?" The man replied, "I'm putting some sense into her." Remembering her mother's prayers, the girl said, "Put some in me too." In his state, the man refused. "Nothing is more ungrateful than a woman," he said. But the girl reassured him. "Oh, don't worry, sir. My mother will thank you and give you anything you want. She prays for me to gain some sense." So the man took her virginity. She was overjoyed and ran home. "Mother, I have some sense now," she exclaimed. Her mother asked, "How did you get sense, child?" The simple girl eagerly explained. "A man put it in me with a long, sinewy, red thing that moved in and out." When the mother heard this, she said, "My child, you've lost what little sense you had." 387. The Man and the Insect. A cicada, seeing a man trying to catch it, said to him, "Go after those birds instead, from which you might gain some benefit. If you catch me, you won't profit from me at all." This fable shows that one should not pursue things that are useless and unprofitable. 388. The Ploughman and the Widow. A friend of Aesop came to him and, with the permission of the guards, entered to see him. With tears in his eyes, the friend said, "What have we come to?" Aesop replied by telling him a fable. A woman, having buried her husband, was sitting beside his tomb, weeping uncontrollably. A man who was ploughing nearby saw her and became attracted to her. He left his oxen yoked to the plough and approached her, pretending to weep as well. She paused and asked, "Why are you weeping?" The man answered, "I have buried a good and wise wife. When I weep, I find that it lightens my grief." She replied, "I, too, have lost a good husband, and when I weep, I lighten the burden of my grief, just as you do." The man said, "Since we have both suffered the same fate, why don't we get to know each other better? I'll love you as I loved my wife, and you shall love me as you loved your husband." With this, he persuaded her. While they were engaged in their pleasure, someone drove off his oxen. When the ploughman returned and could not find his oxen, he began to weep and cry out in earnest. The woman asked, "Why are you crying?" The man replied, "Woman, now I really have something to mourn, and you ask me why I am grieving, when you can see the past fortune has brought me to." 389. The Cat and the Birds. A cat devised a cunning plan. He pretended it was his birthday and invited the birds to a celebration. The unsuspecting birds arrived at his home. Once they were inside, the cat seized his chance. He quickly shut the doors, trapping the birds. Then, one by one, he began to eat them. This tale illustrates how people sometimes enter situations with high hopes, only to face a harsh reality. 390. The Crow and the Water Jar. A thirsty crow noticed a large jar. At the bottom, there was just a little bit of water. The crow tried for a long time to spill the water out, hoping it would spill onto the ground and quench her thirst. But after a while, her strength gave out. Frustrated, the crow decided to use her cleverness. She dropped small stones into the jar. As the stones sank, the water rose on its own. Eventually, she was able to drink. 391. The Sailors and the Stones. On a sea voyage, a certain wealthy gentleman grew frustrated with the bad weather. As the sailors were rowing with less effort due to the storm, the man yelled at them, "Hey, if you don't make this ship go faster, I'll throw stones at you." One of the sailors replied, "I just wish we were somewhere where you could find stones to throw." 392. The Donkey and the Wolf. A donkey was once ill. A wolf came to visit him and began to gently stroke his body, asking which part hurt the most. The donkey, fearing that the wolf would attack a healthy part if he said one part was healthy and another sick, claimed his whole body was weak. "You cannot touch any part of me," he told the wolf, "that is not feeble and infirm." This fable teaches us not to trust wicked and perverse individuals. Even when they pretend to show kindness, they always intend to do harm. 393. The Ethiopian. A man bought an Ethiopian, thinking that his colour was a result of neglect by his previous owner. He brought him home and used every cleanser and tried every bath to wash him. But despite his efforts, he could not change the colour, and instead he made the Ethiopian ill from all the treatments. This fable shows that natures remain as they were originally created. 394. The Fox and the Lion. A fox lived with a lion, serving him as an assistant. The fox would point out prey, while the lion would attack and capture it. They divided the spoils according to their status. The fox grew jealous of the lion's larger share and decided to hunt on her own rather than just scouting. But when she tried to catch something from a flock, she became the first prey for the hunters. It is safer to serve than to rule dangerously. 395. The Eagle and the Snake. An eagle and a snake were fighting each other. The snake had captured the eagle and tightened its grip. A farmer saw this and, freeing the eagle from the snake's hold, let it go. The snake, angered by what had happened, poisoned the farmer's drinking water. As the farmer, unaware of the danger, was about to drink, the eagle swooped down and snatched the cup from his hands. Those who do good are rewarded with gratitude. 396. The Kites and the Swans. The kites originally had a voice similar to the swans. However, when they heard the sound of horses neighing, they were fascinated and tried to imitate it. As they attempted to mimic the sound, they gradually lost their original voice. In the end, they neither retained their own voice nor successfully learned how to neigh. By imitating something that isn't suited to you, you can lose what you originally had. 397. The Birdcatcher and the Cricket. A birdcatcher heard a cricket and thought he was about to make a big catch, judging its size by the loudness of its song. But when he approached and caught his prey, he found it was worthless. The birdcatcher then criticized the whole process of making judgments based on appearances, as it often leads people to wrong conclusions. The story shows how people who are of little value can seem greater than they truly are. 398. The Raven and the Swan. The raven saw the swan and envied his white colour. Thinking that his own colour came from the water in which he bathed, the raven left the altars where he found his food, and instead spent time with the swans in the lakes and rivers. This did nothing to change his colour, but he starved because he couldn't find food. A change in habits doesn't change a person's nature. 399. The Goose and the Swan. A wealthy man wanted to raise both a goose and a swan, but for different reasons. The swan was for singing and the goose was for eating. When the time came for the goose to meet its fate and have its throat cut, the darkness of the night prevented the man from recognizing which bird was which. In the confusion, he grabbed the swan instead of the goose. The swan, realizing what was happening, sang a death song, revealing its true nature. Thanks to the song, the swan narrowly escaped death. The fable shows that music can be so powerful that it can even delay death. Now 400. The Shepherd and the Honeybees. Some honeybees were making honey in the hollow of an oak tree. A shepherd came across the bees' work and decided to take some of the honey. The bees, however, swarmed around him and stung him with their stingers. Eventually, the shepherd exclaimed, "I give up. I don't need the honey if it means dealing with the bees." If you chase after wicked gains, trouble will follow. 401. The Man, the Mare, and the Foal. A man was riding a pregnant mare when, while they were on the road, the mare gave birth to a foal. The foal followed its mother immediately, but quickly became unsteady on its feet. The foal then said to the man, "Look, you can see that I am very small and weak, not able to travel. If you leave me here, I will die. But if you take me with you, back to your home, and raise me, I will grow and later on let you ride me." This story shows that we should do favors for those who can return them. 402. The Hunter and the Horseman. A hunter had caught a hare and was carrying it home. As he travelled, he met a man on horseback who asked for the hare, pretending that he wanted to buy it. Once the horseman took the hare from the hunter, he immediately galloped off. The hunter started to chase after him, thinking he might catch up. But as the horseman got farther and farther away, the hunter reluctantly called out, "Go ahead, I've already given the hare to you as a gift." This story shows how people who have their possessions taken from them involuntarily often pretend that they gave them away willingly.